So today I'm going to do a quick video on how to do crayon engraving. Engraving means that you're cutting into something. In this case, we're not going to be cutting, we're going to be scratching. So what you need is you need a Sharpie or some other permanent kind of marker. You don't want something that bleeds in water. So you're going to take a piece of paper, you're going to do your drawing in light pencil, and then you're going to go over those lines in Sharpie. Or if you don't have Sharpie, you can just paint over those lines in thicker lines of India ink, the same ink that you're going to use in the final steps here that I'm about to show you. So you can see here that I built up the crayons. The idea is not to get the crayon going over the lines. The lines need to remain uncovered because you do want the ink that's going to go over the top to stick in those areas. And if they're covered with wax, they're not going to stick. The wax will keep those lines from being covered with the ink. So make sure not to crayon over the lines. When you're all done, you'll see that there are no white spots. That's good, because any little white spots are going to wind up turning black, where the ink actually seeps through to the paper. All right, so I grabbed a brush, which I had here, but you could use a Q-tip. I suppose if you wanted to, you could even use a piece of paper towel. It'll make your fingers really dirty and you'll have a hard time getting them clean, so I wouldn't suggest fingers to apply the ink. But you want to apply it smoothly, but make sure that it's not really thick in any area when you first go over it. If you take a look here, you'll see how there aren't any real thick areas. You can see through that first coat that I'm putting on, and I still have to go over to the left and over to the right in order to get that coat done. Now you can see that I've applied that second coat, and you can still see some areas where the crayon is coming through a little bit. That's fine, not a problem. That's better than making the ink too thick. Now, let's take a look at some possible etching tools, okay? Those are tools that you would use to actually do the engraving. Take a look at this. I've used a toothpick, and you can see that it kind of makes a very crude kind of look in your scratches. You can see that the ink did not come off totally. That's partially because the stick couldn't cut through the India ink to the crayon beneath, and it could also be that the ink was a little bit too thick in that area, and it was just a comedy of errors that gave us a really crude line. You'll also notice that I made the mistake of going right over a line here that was supposed to remain intact. So try and figure out when you do this, where your lines are as you go along. Like, go slowly so that you don't wind up bridging the line. Now I tried a screw, and I found that the screw with a pretty sharp point gave me a much better line. You can see that these lines are a tiny bit thick, but it did cut through the India ink pretty well. The best thing I found was actually a paper clip that you can see I unbent and made lines with. I found that this gave me a nice little handle, and I could really control it very well. I suppose if I used a nail, it would have worked fine also. Not a nail in your hand, a nail like you would put into the wall. That would probably have worked okay too. All right, and here you can see the final work. Every time I hit a line, I would switch to a different texture. Now, I admit that I didn't come up with very many textures here. I was trying to get this done quickly for you, but obviously I used some circles with dots or X's in the middle, and then I use some arches, and then I use some hatching, which are lines that are next to other lines in the upper right-hand corner. You should definitely go for more variety of both colors in the background. I only had 8 colors. I tried my best to get other colors out of them, but I wasn't that successful. And definitely go for different variety of shapes. That would have made this a lot more interesting to look at. But overall, I was not unhappy with the results. So I hope you like this demo and do better than me, would you? All right. See you soon.